My doctor brother hit my daughter in front of the whole family just because she accidentally knocked over an expensive bottle of alcohol, and everyone laughed except me. I grew up as the middle child in a family where I was never quite enough. My older brother was the golden boy, the brilliant pediatrician. From the time he was 12, our parents talked about him becoming a doctor, like it was destiny. They paid for expensive prep courses, hired tutors, drove him to medical school interviews across 3 states. When he got his white coat, they threw a party that cost more than my entire college education. I remember standing in the corner of that party, watching my mother cry with pride while she showed everyone the photos. "Isn't he amazing?" she kept saying. We always knew he'd be special. I'd graduated with honors 2 months earlier. She'd sent a card. My younger sister was the creative one, always chasing entrepreneurial dreams with our parents' endless encouragement and financial backing. She'd start a handmade jewelry business, fail within 6 months, and they'd call it a learning experience. When her online boutique collapsed owing thousands, my parents covered the debts without blinking. "She's finding herself," my father would say, like debt was part of a spiritual journey. And me? I went to college for accounting and got a stable job. I'd worked 2 jobs through college to pay my own tuition, slept 4 hours a night, graduated with honors. My parents missed my graduation because my sister had a photography showing that same weekend. The showing had 6 attendees, including me. When I walked into family dinners, conversations didn't pause. I remember one Thanksgiving, I'd just gotten promoted to manager. I waited for a break in my brother's story about some surgery to mention it. "That's nice, honey," my mother had said, then turned back to my brother. "So what did the parents say when you told them the good news?" I'd learned to stop trying after that. My parents lost their small automotive parts business when I was 28. They'd run that shop for 30 years, and when the economy tanked and the big chain stores moved in, they couldn't compete. The business collapse coincided with the end of their lease, and suddenly they couldn't afford rent on their apartment. They were already 2 months behind when the landlord gave them a final notice. Around the same time, my sister's 3rd business venture collapsed, leaving her drowning in credit card debt and facing eviction. She called me crying at 2 in the morning. My brother, living in his expensive house with his doctor's salary, told our parents to declare bankruptcy and told our sister to get a real job. Then he went back to his comfortable life. I was the one with the steady paycheck and emergency savings. My mother called and told me she'd given her landlord my number for payment arrangements. My father left me a voicemail saying, "Family takes care of family." My sister sent me her bank account information. They'd decided among themselves that I would save them. I started paying $1,200 a month for my parents' rent. I covered my sister's car payment and utilities, sometimes groceries when she called desperate. The money I'd saved for a house down payment? Gone within 8 months. My daughter's college fund stopped growing. I'd been raising my daughter alone since she was 6 months old. Her father disappeared before she was born, and I never asked my family for help. I worked full-time through pregnancy, figured out daycare on my own, somehow kept my career advancing. My daughter was 6 now, bright and energetic, with my eyes and a smile that could light up rooms. I loved her fiercely. But at family gatherings, we were invisible. My brother would arrive and become the center of attention, telling dramatic stories about saving babies and diagnosing rare conditions. He'd bought a house in the nicest part of town, drove a luxury car, vacationed in Thailand and Switzerland. Our parents worshipped him. They kept 3 framed photos of him in his white coat on their mantle. There were no photos of my graduation. When my mother called to invite me to a family gathering, I almost said no. My hand hovered over the decline button. It was Friday evening. I was exhausted from auditing a deliberately misleading set of books all week, and the thought of spending Sunday being ignored while my brother performed his one-man show made my stomach turn. I could already picture it. Sitting on the edge of the couch with distant cousins, making polite small talk while everyone else clustered around my brother. But my daughter had been asking about her cousins all week. She'd made them drawings at school. And that pathetic part of me, the little girl who'd spent her whole childhood trying to earn gold stars that never came, still wanted my parents to notice me. "Sure, Mom. What time?" 2 o'clock, honey. "Oh, and could you grab some food and drinks on your way? You know, just whatever you think we need." There it was. The ask that wasn't really asking. The expectation that I'd fund the party at their house with their guest list. Of course she didn't offer to reimburse me. Of course. "Sure," I said, because what else was I going to say? Saturday morning, I took my daughter to the big grocery store across town. She skipped beside me, chattering about seeing her cousins, about the new playground at school, about her friend's birthday party next month. I loaded the cart methodically while she pointed out things she wanted me to buy. Multiple bags of chips. 3 kinds of dip. A vegetable tray arranged like a rainbow, $25. A fruit tray shaped like a flower, another 20. Cookies from the bakery section because my mother would complain if I bought store brand. Juice boxes, 2 cases. Soda, 3 different kinds. Bottled water, napkins, plates, cups, all the disposable stuff they'd go through and never think about. Can we get these crackers, Mama? The fish-shaped ones? Sure, baby, put them in. The cashier, a teenager with braces, made small talk as she scanned. Having a party? Something like that. Looks fun. Have a great time. I smiled and nodded. $237. I swiped my card and tried not to calculate how many hours of work that represented, how many diapers or books or therapy sessions for my daughter that money could have bought. We loaded the bags into the car. My daughter insisted on carrying the lightest one, proud to be helping. I'm so strong, right, Mama? The strongest, I said, kissing her forehead. That evening, I helped my daughter pick out her favorite dress, the pink one with flowers embroidered across the chest. It was getting small on her, the hem riding up above her knees, the sleeves a bit tight on her arms. She'd grown so much over the year. Do I look pretty, Mama? You look beautiful. She twirled, watching the skirt flare out. Will Cousin Emma be there? Probably, and Maya and Jake. Good. Emma said she'd teach me a new game. I brushed her hair, working out the tangles gently. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, patient, swinging her legs. She was singing a song from her favorite movie, the one about the princess and the adventure. Her voice was sweet and slightly off-key, the way 6-year-olds sing when they're happy. I divided her hair into sections and started braiding. French braids, 2 of them, which took me 20 minutes and multiple attempts because I'd never been good at it. My fingers fumbled with the strands. She sat so still, trusting me completely. Is Uncle going to be there? She asked suddenly. Probably. He's always talking about boring stuff. I laughed despite myself. Yeah, he is. Last time he told that story about the sick baby for like 1,000,000 hours. It wasn't quite 1,000,000 hours. Felt like it. I tied ribbons at the ends of her braids. Pink, matching her dress. There. Perfect. She examined herself in the mirror, turning her head side to side to see the braids from different angles. I love it. Thanks, Mama. You're welcome, sweetie. Can I bring my new coloring book? To Grandma's? Yeah. In case it gets boring. Sure. But you might not need it if you're playing with the other kids. Just in case, she insisted, already running to her room to find it. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. Lines of stress I didn't recognize framed my eyes. My clothes were fine, but nothing special. Just jeans and a sweater. Nobody at the party would notice what I wore anyway. Why was I even going? I asked myself that question again. My daughter would have fun with her cousins either way. I could drop her off and leave, pick her up later, save myself the pain of being ignored for hours. But I never did that. I always stayed. Always hoped that this time would be different, that this time they'd notice me, include me, value me. Some habits are hard to break. Sunday afternoon arrived. We pulled up to my parents' apartment, and I grabbed the bags while my daughter carried the lightest one, proud of herself. The door was open, people streaming in and out. The place was packed. Parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, kids running everywhere. My cousin was there with his expensive new camera, filming everything. I set the bags on the counter. My mother grabbed a chip bag to refill a bowl without thanking me. My daughter spotted her cousins and ran off to play. I found a spot on the couch making small talk with distant relatives. The kids played circuits through the house, shrieking and laughing. Adults clustered in groups, talking and complaining. My father manned a barbecue on the tiny balcony. For a moment, I let myself relax. Then my brother arrived. He came through the door carrying an expensive bottle of imported liquor, holding it up for everyone to see. Everyone rushed to greet him. My mother practically shoved people aside to hug him. My father abandoned the grill. Various relatives called out greetings. He placed his bottle carefully on the side table and launched into a story about a complicated surgery he'd performed, using dramatic medical terminology. The room fell silent. People leaned forward, completely engrossed. My mother's face glowed with pride. I sank deeper into the couch, disappearing again. The kids were playing a game, some elaborate thing with rules they'd made up, running circuits through the living room, kitchen, and back outside. My daughter was in the middle of the pack, her face flushed with excitement, her braids bouncing with each step. She was laughing, that pure childhood laugh that makes everything else fade away. She rounded the corner into the living room at full speed, not watching where she was going, lost in the joy of the game. Her foot caught on the edge of the coffee table. She stumbled forward, arms windmilling, trying to catch her balance. For a split second, I thought she'd recover. But momentum carried her sideways, directly toward the side table where my brother had so carefully displayed his expensive bottle. It happened in slow motion and too fast all at once. Her shoulder hit the table. The bottle teetered. Everyone in the room turned to look. Time seemed to suspend. That bottle balanced on the edge, and I could see my brother's face beginning to change, his expression shifting from mild interest to alarm to something darker. The bottle fell. It hit the hardwood floor with a sound like a gunshot. Glass exploded in every direction, glittering shards skittering across the floor. The liquid spread in a pool, amber and sticky, the smell of expensive alcohol suddenly overwhelming in the small space. A piece of glass skipped across the floor and hit the wall. The room went completely silent. The other kids froze mid-motion. Adults stopped talking mid-sentence. Even the music from outside seemed to fade away. My daughter stood in the center of the destruction, her eyes wide with horror. She looked down at the broken glass, at the spreading puddle, at her hands like they'd betrayed her. Her bottom lip started to tremble. She looked up at the room full of adults staring at her, and I watched her face crumple, preparing to cry. "I'm sorry," she started to say, her voice small and scared. "I didn't mean to, I was just—" My brother rose from his chair. Not quickly, deliberately. Each movement measured and controlled. He was a big man, over 6 feet, and when he stood he seemed to fill the whole room. His face had gone red, that deep color that starts at the neck and creeps up. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. His hands were balled into fists at his sides. My daughter saw him coming and froze like a rabbit facing a predator. She didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there as he crossed the room toward her. I was on the other side of the living room, my view partially blocked by people. I started to stand, started to move, but everything felt like I was moving through molasses. He reached her, stood over her. She was so small next to him, just a tiny thing with braids and a pink dress. Looking up at this giant, angry man. "You stupid little brat," he said, his voice cold and controlled in a way that was somehow worse than yelling. The slap came before anyone could react. His full hand, her small face. The sound was sharp and loud, a crack that seemed to echo off every surface. Her head snapped to the side from the force. For 1 heartbeat. 2. She didn't react, just stood there, her face turned, her mouth slightly open in shock. Then the mark appeared, the perfect outline of his hand across her cheek, fingers clearly visible, red and angry against her pale skin. And then she started to cry. Not the normal cry of a child who's been scolded. This was something primal. Terror and pain and betrayal all mixed together. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. She brought her hand up to her face, touched her cheek like she couldn't believe what had just happened. "That bottle cost $300, my brother said, looking down at her with disgust. "But what would you know about that? You're useless, just like your mother." That's when I heard it. The laughter. My sister first, a sharp bark of amusement, then a full laugh. My mother's nervous giggle, a cousin chuckling, another relative trying to suppress a smile. The sound of people finding this funny, finding my daughter's pain entertaining. My daughter's crying intensified. She looked around the room, desperately seeking help, seeking comfort, seeking anyone to tell her this wasn't okay. But no one moved. Some people looked away. Some watched with uncomfortable expressions. A few smiled. And my brother just stood there, arms crossed, satisfied with what he'd done. Something inside me snapped. The part of me that had always been quiet, always been accommodating, always swallowed her anger to keep the peace. It just broke. I felt it shatter like that bottle on the floor. And what rose up in its place was pure, incandescent rage. "Shut up," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "Everyone shut up right now." My sister kept laughing, slapping her knee like this was prime entertainment. My mother tittered nervously and said, "Oh, don't make such a drama out of it. Everyone just needs to calm down." I ignored them and walked straight to my brother, getting right in his face. "You just hit my daughter," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "You hit a 6-year-old child because she accidentally knocked over a bottle." A bottle. He looked at me with that same condescending expression he'd perfected over the years, the one that said I was being hysterical and unreasonable. "It was a correction," he said calmly. "Someone needs to teach her to be careful. Clearly, you're not doing it." My mother stepped forward, her tone placating in a way that made my blood boil. You've always been so dramatic even when you were little. Look, she's already stopped crying so much. Kids are resilient. I turned to face the entire room, my daughter still sobbing at my feet. I looked at each person individually, burning their faces into my memory. The ones who laughed, the ones who looked away, the ones who stood there and let this happen. Does anyone here have a problem with what just happened? I asked. Does anyone want to say that hitting a child in the face is wrong? Silence. Deafening, cowardly silence. My mother broke it first. That bottle was very expensive, she said, and I couldn't tell if she was genuinely more concerned about the liquor than her granddaughter. Then, as an afterthought, she added, "Is she okay?" My father finally spoke up, his voice weak and uncomfortable. It was just a reflex. Kids need to learn to be more careful around valuable things. My sister chimed in, still smirking. You're making such a scene over nothing. Look, she's barely even crying anymore. I bent down and scooped my daughter into my arms. She clung to me, her small body shaking, her tears soaking into my shirt. She buried her face in my neck, and I could feel her trying to make herself smaller, like she wanted to disappear. I looked at my parents, at my siblings, at every single person in that room who'd chosen to stay silent or, worse, to laugh. I pay your rent, I said to my parents, my voice low and dangerous. I cover your bills. I've been supporting this family for years while you treat me like I'm worthless. And you just stood there and let someone hurt my daughter. You laughed at her pain. My brother scoffed. Paying a few bills doesn't make you the queen of the family. Get over yourself and stop being so dramatic. I stared at him for a long moment, memorizing every detail of his smug face. Then I looked at my mother, my father, my sister, the aunts and uncles who'd averted their eyes. I wanted to remember this moment, wanted to remember exactly how each of them had failed us. This isn't over, I said quietly, and I meant it as a promise and a threat. I turned and walked out without another word, carrying my daughter. Behind me, I heard my mother calling out something about not leaving in a huff, heard someone make a comment about me being oversensitive, heard my sister's voice saying something I couldn't quite catch that prompted more laughter. I didn't look back. I didn't dignify any of it with a response. I just kept walking, my daughter's weight solid and real in my arms, her tears soaking through my shirt and making a cold, wet patch against my skin. I strapped her into her car seat, my fingers fumbling with the buckles twice before getting them secure. She immediately started crying again, harder this time, all the fear and confusion and hurt pouring out of her in wrenching sobs that made her whole body shake. I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel for a moment, my hands gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. But we needed to get away from there, needed to be home where it was safe. Why did Uncle hit me, Mommy? She asked through her tears, her voice small and broken and so confused it made my heart physically ache. I didn't mean to break it. It was an accident. I said sorry. Why did he hit me so hard? I reached back and held her hand, feeling how small it was in mine, how fragile she was, how completely I had failed to protect her. My own tears finally started to fall, hot and angry, blurring my vision. I know, baby, I managed to say past the lump in my throat. I know it was an accident, and I promise you, I swear to you, nobody is ever going to hurt you like that again. Not ever. Nobody. The drive home took 15 minutes but felt like hours. Every red light was an eternity. My daughter's crying gradually subsided into hiccuping whimpers, then into silence, but it was a wrong kind of silence. Not peaceful, but shocked, traumatized. I kept looking at her in the rearview mirror, watching her stare out the window with that blank expression, one hand still touching her cheek where the handprint was fading to a duller red. At home, I tried everything I could think of to comfort her. I made her favorite hot chocolate, the kind with extra chocolate syrup stirred in, and a mountain of mini marshmallows floating on top. I put on her favorite animated movie, the one she'd watched probably 50 times and could quote entire scenes from. I held her close on the couch, wrapped in her favorite soft blanket, and stroked her hair and whispered to her over and over that she was good and kind and loved, that what happened wasn't her fault, that I loved her more than anything in the world. But none of it worked. She barely touched her hot chocolate, just held the mug and let it grow cold in her hands. She didn't laugh at the funny parts of the movie, the parts that usually had her giggling uncontrollably. She just sat there, so small and still and quiet, fundamentally different from the bright, energetic child who'd skipped into that gathering hours earlier, wearing her favorite pink dress and singing songs. That night was one of the longest of my life. It took hours to get her to sleep, her restless and whimpering, having to come check that I was still there every 15 minutes. When she finally did fall asleep, it was fitful and broken. I sat by her bed in the dark, listening to her breathing, watching for the nightmares I knew would come, and they did. 3 times that night she woke up crying, reaching for me, her small body trembling. Each time I held her and soothed her back to sleep, and each time my rage at my family grew colder and more calculated. Around 3 in the morning, after she'd finally fallen into a deeper sleep, I went to my computer in the living room. The apartment was dark except for the glow of the screen. I opened my banking app with hands that had stopped shaking, steadied by cold fury that had settled into my bones like ice. I navigated to my automatic payments and started systematically destroying every financial connection I had to my family. The monthly transfer for my parents' rent, canceled. The automatic payments to my sister's credit card company, canceled. The grocery fund I'd set up to cover my sister's food costs, deleted. The emergency access I'd given my mother to pull from my savings, revoked and password changed. Every financial thread that tied me to them, I cut with swift, efficient clicks. My finger didn't hesitate once. When I was done, I sat back and stared at the screen showing all the canceled transactions. $1,200 a month to my parents. Another $800 a month average to my sister. Over $20,000 a year I'd been spending to keep them afloat. $20,000 that could have been my daughter's college fund, our emergency savings, a down payment on a house of our own. $20,000 they'd expected and accepted without gratitude. Like it was their right, like I was obligated to bankrupt myself for their comfort. Then I pulled up my messaging app and found my cousin, the one who'd been filming everything with his expensive camera equipment. I typed out a message, my fingers precise on the keys. I need a copy of the video from today, specifically the part where my daughter got hit. I know you filmed it. Send it to me. His response came about 10 minutes later, during which time I'd sat frozen staring at the screen, wondering if he'd help me or protect them. Man, I don't know if I should get involved in this family stuff. It's pretty messy and complicated, you know? Everyone's already upset. My response was immediate. Send me the video. I'm not asking, I'm telling you. You filmed my daughter getting assaulted and you're going to give me that footage. A longer pause this time. Maybe 20 minutes of silence while I waited with my jaw clenched so hard it ached. Then, look, I just spent $500 on this new camera setup. It's professional grade. For my videography business I'm starting. I could send you the file for like $300 to help cover equipment costs and my time editing it together. That seems fair, right? I wanted to reach through the screen and strangle him. My own cousin, trying to profit off my daughter's trauma, trying to sell me evidence of her abuse like it was a service he was providing. The audacity was breathtaking. But I needed that video. I needed proof of what had happened, crystal clear documentation that couldn't be denied or minimized or explained away. So I swallowed my rage and transferred him $300 through the app, watching my account balance drop and feeling sick. 20 minutes later, a video file appeared in my messages, large enough that it took a few minutes to download. I opened it with my heart pounding and watched it 3 times in a row, my stomach turning more with each viewing. The footage was crystal clear, shot in high definition that captured every detail. You could see everything. My daughter running and laughing, stumbling with surprise, the bottle falling in slow motion. My brother's face transforming from surprise to pure rage, every muscle tensing, the way he rose from his chair with deliberate menace. And then the slap, brutal and unmistakable, his full hand connecting with her small face with a crack that the microphone picked up clearly. My daughter's shock, her face contorting from happiness to betrayal to pain, then the tears starting. My brother's voice cold and clear. You stupid little brat. That bottle cost $300, you're useless just like your mother. My sister's laughter in the background high and cruel. My mother's nervous giggling. The sea of faces doing absolutely nothing, just watching, some smiling, some looking away, all of them complicit. I saved the video file in 3 different locations and backed it up to cloud storage. Then I sat there in the dark living room as dawn started breaking outside my window. I made coffee, drank it black even though I hated it that way. Went back to the computer, opened the video one more time. My daughter's laugh cut short, the bottle falling, my brother's face. That slap, her tears. I could hear my mother's voice in my head. Family forgives. Family stays together. But what about when family breaks you? What about when staying together means accepting that your child isn't safe? I thought about calling someone, a friend, a lawyer, anyone who could tell me if this was the right move. But it was 5 in the morning and I knew what they'd say. They'd tell me to be careful. to think about the consequences, to consider mediation or family therapy. They'd tell me to protect him. Nobody would tell me to protect her. They'd assume that was already handled. But it wasn't. Every single person at that gathering had chosen him over her. Over us. I clicked post. Then I closed the laptop and went to check on my daughter. The next morning, I called out of work and took my daughter to a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. I'd found her through frantic internet searches at 4 a.m. The waiting room had cheerful paintings and toys scattered across a colorful rug, but my daughter sat pressed against my side, silent. The psychologist, Dr. Martinez, was a patient woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She spent 15 minutes just sitting on the floor with my daughter, not pushing, just being present. Eventually, my daughter started playing with the dollhouse in the corner. Dr. Martinez asked simple questions, let her answer through play. After an hour, Dr. Martinez called me back in. My daughter was coloring at a small table, absorbed in staying inside the lines. Your daughter has experienced acute trauma, Dr. Martinez said gently. The physical act was harmful, but the betrayal of trust in a family setting compounds it. She's showing dissociative behaviors, hypervigilance, and regression in her emotional responses. Will she be okay? My voice cracked. With consistent therapy and a stable home environment, yes. Children are resilient, but they need to process trauma appropriately. I'd like to see her twice a week initially. I scheduled 8 appointments on the spot, pulling out my credit card without looking at my account balance. On the way home, my daughter asked, "Do I have to go back to Grandma's house?" "No, baby. Never." "Promise?" "I promise." That afternoon, while she napped fitfully, I opened my laptop again. I edited the video carefully, blurring my daughter's face completely. I wrote a description identifying my brother as a pediatrician in our area, explaining what had happened. My cursor hovered over the post button. My hands trembled. This would destroy him. There would be no coming back from this. I thought about my daughter's blank expression in the car. I thought about her asking why he'd hit her. I thought about how she'd flinched when I'd reached to brush her hair from her face. I pressed post. The video was removed within 90 minutes for policies about minors. I'd expected that. I created a more heavily edited version, more blur, more censoring. I posted it across 3 different platforms. This time, it stayed up. Within 2 hours, it had 100 views. By evening, 500. People were sharing it to local parenting groups, tagging the medical clinic where my brother worked. By the time I went to bed, it had been viewed 3,000 times. I woke up to my phone exploding with notifications. By the next morning, it had been shared 200 times. Comments were flooding in. "I take my kids to this doctor. Never again. This is horrifying. Someone needs to report him to the medical board. My daughter goes to his clinic. We're transferring immediately." By the afternoon, over 1,000 shares. Parents were tagging the clinic where my brother worked, demanding statements. The clinic's page was being bombarded with 1-star reviews. "Employs a child abuser. If this is how he treats children in public, how does he treat them in his office?" Someone had identified him by name in the comments, linking to his professional profile. That's when things really exploded. Local parenting groups picked it up. School message boards. A mom blogger with 50,000 followers shared it with a caption, "This is why we need to speak up when we see abuse." My phone started ringing constantly that evening. My parents, my sister. Numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored all of them. I sat on my couch watching the view count climb. 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. People were finding my brother's social media profiles, his clinic's webpage, everything. They were leaving comments, sending messages, sharing it to their own networks. By midnight, he'd deleted every social media account. But people had already screenshotted everything. His face was everywhere. The next day, a local news website picked it up. "Local pediatrician under fire after video shows him slapping child." The article was careful not to make definitive statements, using words like allegedly and appears to show. But the damage was done. Parents were canceling appointments en masse. The clinic released a statement. "We are aware of the video circulating and take these allegations extremely seriously. Dr. Name has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation." Within a month, that investigation concluded with his termination. The medical board opened their own investigation. His license wasn't revoked, but the restrictions they placed made it nearly impossible for him to practice pediatric medicine anywhere. Some people tried to defend him in comments. "We don't know the full context. The mother probably edited the video to make it look worse. Kids need discipline these days." But they were drowned out by thousands of others. There is no context that makes hitting a child okay. I don't care what she broke. You don't hit someone else's kid. This man is a pediatrician. He should know better than anyone how harmful this is. I read every comment. Every single one. The supportive ones made me cry. The defensive ones made me furious. But I didn't respond to any of them. I just watched my brother's world collapse in real time. My phone started ringing constantly. My parents, my sister, my aunts and uncles. I ignored every single call. I took my daughter to her therapy appointments, held her when she had nightmares, and watched the videos spread further and further across the internet. I felt nothing, just a cold emptiness where my family used to be. A month after I posted the video, I finally answered when my mother called. She was crying, her voice high and hysterical. "How could you do this to us?" she screamed. "How could you be so cruel? We're being evicted. We have nowhere to go." "You were already 2 months behind on rent before I stopped paying," I said calmly. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you laughed at my daughter getting hit." "I didn't laugh. I was nervous. You know I laugh when I'm uncomfortable. You stood there while your son hit your granddaughter and you said nothing. You commented on the price of the bottle before asking if she was okay. That's not fair. You're twisting everything. He didn't mean to hit her so hard. He was frustrated. That bottle was expensive. She's 6 years old, Mom. He didn't mean it. He was just stressed. You've destroyed his life over nothing." "Over nothing?" I repeated. "He hit my child in the face and called her worthless. You stood there and laughed. That's not nothing. Why are you being so cruel? Your brother is devastated. He's lost everything. His patience, his reputation, his career. We're about to lose our home. Don't you care about family? Did you care about my daughter when she was crying on your floor?" Silence. "After everything we've done for you," my mother continued, her tone shifting to wounded martyr. "After raising you, after what?" I interrupted. "After treating me like I was invisible? After taking my money while making it clear I was never good enough? I've spent years paying your bills while you fawned over my brother. I was your ATM and you couldn't even defend my daughter. We're family," my mother said, her voice breaking. "Family forgives. Family stays together. Family protects each other," I said. "You made your choice. Now, live with it." I hung up and blocked her number. Then I blocked my father's, my sister's, and every other family member who'd been at that gathering. I felt a strange sense of freedom, like cutting those ties had released some weight I'd been carrying since childhood. Through cousins who hadn't been at the gathering, I heard updates over the following weeks. My parents had been evicted after missing 3 months of rent. They were staying in a temporary municipal shelter on the east side, sharing a room with 3 other families. My father's pride was shattered. He'd owned a business for 30 years, and now he slept on a cot behind a curtain. My sister had moved in with a friend, humiliated that her financial support had vanished overnight. She'd posted vague messages on social media about learning who your real family is and betrayal when you least expect it. A mutual friend told me she was working at a coffee shop now, actually showing up for shifts, actually earning her own money for the first time in years. The aunts and uncles who'd occasionally gotten help from me were scrambling to cover unexpected expenses. The uncle whose car repair I'd paid for last year, he was taking the bus now. The aunt whose medical bills I'd helped with, she'd set up a payment plan with the hospital. My brother had lost his position at the clinic entirely. Not temporarily, not on leave, but fired. But it wasn't clean or simple. Not everyone believed the video. Some comments defended him. "This is clearly edited. Where's the full context? Cancel culture destroying a good doctor over one mistake. He's been my children's pediatrician for 5 years. Never once was he anything but gentle." For every 10 horrified parents, there was one defender who couldn't reconcile the man in the video with the doctor they knew. 2 weeks after I posted the video, a thick envelope arrived by certified mail. A cease and desist letter from my brother's lawyer. Defamation, invasion of privacy, emotional distress. They demanded I remove the video and post a public apology. I stared at that letter, hands shaking. What if he could actually sue me? I called a cousin who'd gone to law school, one of the few family members still speaking to me. She read it. "It's mostly bluster," she said, "but you did make mistakes. That first version with his full name? Legally risky. If the video had been ambiguous, you could be facing real problems. But it shows exactly what happened. I know. That's why he won't actually sue. Any court case would make this evidence. He's hoping to scare you." I didn't back down, didn't remove anything, but I didn't sleep well for weeks. Eventually, his lawyer gave up. The video had been shared thousands of times anyway. The clinic's investigation took 3 weeks. They interviewed staff, reviewed past patient complaints I didn't know existed, moments of impatience, a few parents who'd switched doctors. They weighed everything with their legal team and HR. Finally, they gave him a choice: resign voluntarily with severance, or be terminated for cause. He chose termination, wanting it on record that he was the victim. It didn't help. The clinic released a statement about maintaining professional standards and zero tolerance for violence. He was working at a pharmacy across town now, stocking shelves for $15 an hour. Someone had recognized him and posted about it, and that became its own small news story. "Disgraced doctor now works minimum wage," one headline read. I didn't feel happy about any of it. I didn't feel that vindictive satisfaction you read about in revenge stories. I just felt tired and sad and certain. I didn't feel happy about any of it. I didn't feel that vindictive satisfaction you hear about in revenge stories. I just felt tired and sad and certain. These were consequences they'd earned. These were choices they'd made. I'd simply stopped cushioning them from reality. My daughter's therapy was helping. Slowly, her personality started to return. She laughed more. She played with her friends again. The nightmares came less frequently. But she never asked about visiting her grandparents anymore. And I noticed she flinched slightly whenever someone raised their voice. The damage was there, healing, but permanent. At work, I threw myself into projects, staying late and taking on extra responsibilities. My supervisor noticed and commented on my renewed dedication. I didn't tell her I was using work to avoid thinking about the smoking crater where my family used to be. One evening, I came home to find a long, handwritten letter from my mother shoved under my apartment door. The envelope was thick, multiple pages inside. I almost threw it away without reading it. My hand hovered over the trash can, but some self-destructive part of me needed to know what she'd say. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened it. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. She wrote about how much they'd sacrificed to raise me, how they'd always loved me even when I was difficult. She described their situation in the shelter in heartbreaking detail, how my father's health was deteriorating, how they were eating donated food and sleeping on cots. She questioned how I could let this happen to them, whether I'd really let them suffer like this over one mistake, one moment of poor judgment. She reminded me of every birthday party they'd thrown, every school event they'd attended, every way they'd fulfilled their obligations as parents. She didn't mention my daughter once. Not one word of apology or regret or acknowledgement of what had happened to her. It was all about their pain, their suffering, their needs. I felt something crack inside me, that last bit of hope I'd been carrying, that maybe, somehow they'd understand, that maybe they'd see what they'd done wrong and actually apologize. The letter made it clear that would never happen. In their minds, I was the villain in this story. I was the ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned her family over nothing. I picked up my phone and dialed my mother's number, unblocking it for just this one call. She answered on the first ring. "You got my letter?" she asked hopefully. "I did." "So you'll help us? You'll talk to your brother and work this out? We can be a family again if you just—" "Why didn't you mention my daughter in your letter?" I asked, cutting her off. Silence. "In 5 pages about how much you're suffering, you didn't mention her once. You didn't apologize for what happened to her. You didn't even acknowledge it. That's because we're trying to move forward," my mother said carefully. "We can't change the past. Your brother is sorry. He hit my daughter in the face and called her useless." You laughed. "It wasn't like that. You're remembering it wrong. He was just frustrated and—" "I have it on video, Mom. Crystal clear video. I know exactly how it was." Another long silence. "He's lost everything," she finally said, her voice small. "His career is destroyed. He's working at a pharmacy. Do you understand what you've done to him? Do you understand what he did to my daughter?" I asked. "Do you understand that she has nightmares? That she's in therapy twice a week? That she flinches now when people move too quickly? Children are resilient. She'll be fine. But your brother—" I hung up. I didn't yell or cry or say anything dramatic. I just ended the call and blocked the number again. Then I sat at my kitchen table and cried for the first time since this had all started. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I was grieving. I was mourning the family I'd always wished I had. The parents who would have protected my daughter. The siblings who would have supported me. That family had never existed. It was a fantasy I'd clung to for 34 years, and it was time to let it go. The next few months were hard in ways I hadn't anticipated. At work, my performance slipped. I'd always been meticulous, detail-oriented, the person who caught errors everyone else missed. But suddenly I was distracted, sleeping poorly, replaying everything in my mind. In late November, about 6 weeks after the incident, I made a significant error on a major audit report for one of our biggest clients. I transposed numbers in a key financial summary, making it look like they'd gained $12 million when they'd actually lost $7 million. The client's CFO called my supervisor directly, furious. My supervisor, Tom, called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. He was usually easygoing, but his face was serious. "Sit down. We need to talk about the Morrison account." My stomach dropped. "I know. I'm sorry. You transposed figures in the executive summary. The summary that went to their board. Do you understand how serious this is?" I nodded, unable to speak. $20 million account. They're threatening to fire us. I groveled for an hour to keep them. "Tom, I've been going through family stuff. And I don't care about your family stuff. Everyone has family stuff. You're a professional. You don't let personal problems compromise client accounts." He slid a paper across the desk. Formal written warning. One more mistake and I'd be fired. I signed it with shaking hands. "Get it together," he said. "You're good at your job when you're focused. Right now, you're a liability." I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes before returning to my desk. That's when I knew I needed more support. I found a support group through my daughter's therapist. Single parents dealing with family trauma. The first night, I sat in my car for 15 minutes, watching people enter the church basement. But I went in, 8 people in a circle, bad coffee, stories that echoed my own. When my turn came, I started crying before getting the words out. My brother hit my daughter and everyone laughed. So I posted a video and destroyed his career. Now my parents are homeless and everyone thinks I'm a monster. A woman named Karen reached over and squeezed my hand. "You protected your daughter. That's what we're supposed to do." Others shared their stories. Parents who'd been told they were overreacting, who'd been pressured to forgive abuse, who'd chosen their children over toxic families. That group became my lifeline. They understood when no one else could. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that my cousin with the camera had also been cut off from the family. They blamed him for giving me the video, called him a traitor. I felt a small pang of guilt about that, but not enough to change anything. He'd made his choice, same as everyone else. 3 months after I'd cut contact, a social worker from the city showed up at my door. She was kind but professional, letting me know that my parents were temporarily residing in a municipal shelter. "They listed you as next of kin," she explained. "I'm not asking you to take them in or support them financially. This is just courtesy notification in case you want to provide assistance." I thanked her for the information and closed the door. That night, the guilt hit hard. I sat on my couch after my daughter went to bed, staring at my phone. They were in a shelter. My parents, who'd owned a business, were sleeping on cots. Because of me. The voice in my head sounded like my mother. "After everything we did for you." I picked up my phone, unblocked my mother's number. My fingers moved across the screen, typing before I could stop myself. "Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe we could talk. Not about money, but about..." My finger hovered over send. From my daughter's room, a small cry. Just a whimper. First nightmare in 2 weeks. I stared at the message. At that word, maybe. The maybe that would open the door. The maybe that would let them back in. The maybe that would teach my daughter that her safety was negotiable. I deleted the message. Blocked the number again. This time, I went further. Deleted the contact entirely. Not just blocked. Gone. My daughter cried out again. I went to her room. She was twisting in her sheets, caught in some dream. I sat on the edge of her bed and stroked her hair until she settled, murmuring something about running and hiding. I stayed there for an hour, watching her sleep, reminding myself why I'd made this choice. Some bridges need to burn. Some relationships are toxic enough that they can't be salvaged. And my daughter was worth more than their conditional acceptance. My daughter started asking questions about a month after we'd cut contact. We were eating dinner, just spaghetti and meatballs, when she looked up from her plate. "Mama, when's Grandma's birthday party?" My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "What? Baby? Grandma's birthday. It's next month, right? Are we going to her party?" "No, sweetheart, we're not." "Why not?" I put my fork down. How do you explain family dysfunction to a 6-year-old? How do you tell your child that her grandparents chose someone else over her? Remember what happened at the last party? When you got hurt? Her hand moved unconsciously to her cheek. When Uncle hit me. Yeah, that was wrong. What he did was very wrong. And Grandma and Grandpa didn't protect you. They didn't tell him it was wrong to hit you. Because I broke the bottle. No, baby. Listen to me. I knelt beside her chair, took her small hands in mine. You didn't do anything wrong. Accidents happen. Grown-ups aren't supposed to hit children, ever, no matter what. And when someone hurts you, I have to keep you safe. That means we don't go places where people might hurt you again. But Grandma wouldn't hurt me. Grandma let someone else hurt you and didn't stop it. That's almost the same thing. She thought about this, her face serious. So I don't have grandparents anymore? The question hit like a physical blow. You have me, and you have friends, and Dr. Martinez and people who love you and keep you safe. That's what matters. Okay. She went back to her spaghetti, seemingly satisfied. But 2 weeks later, why doesn't Grandma call me anymore? A month after that, Lucy's grandma picked her up from school today. Why can't my grandma pick me up? Every question was a small knife. The worst came 4 months in. I picked her up from school one afternoon. She was quiet in the car, staring out the window. How was your day, baby? Silence. Sweetie? Emma's grandma brought cupcakes for her birthday. Her voice was small. All the kids have grandmas except me. My chest tightened. You have me. I know. She kept staring out the window. But sometimes I wish we could go back. Even if Uncle was mean. At least I had cousins to play with. At least there were parties. I pulled over into a parking lot, turned to face her. My heart was pounding. Do you want to see them again? Grandma and Grandpa? She thought about it. Really thought. Her face scrunched up in concentration. Finally, no. It hurts too much there. I just wish it didn't have to be this way. I wish there was a place where Uncle wasn't mean and everyone was nice. Me too, baby. Me too. Is that place real? No, I said honestly. But we're building something better. Just us. It takes time, but it's going to be good. I promise. She nodded, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She was 6 years old and already learning that some things can't be fixed, that some losses you just have to carry. I held her hand all the way home, and when we got there, I made her favorite cookies and we ate them warm from the oven. It didn't fix anything, but it helped. That realization should have been freeing, but it just hurt. I cried that night, alone in my bedroom after my daughter had finally fallen asleep. I cried for the little girl I'd been, the one who'd tried so hard to be noticed. I cried for the family dinners I'd never have, the holidays that would forever be awkward and empty. I cried for my daughter, who'd lost her extended family because the adults in her life had failed her. But when I woke up the next morning, I felt something shift. The guilt was still there, but it was quieter. I made my daughter breakfast, braided her hair, sent her off to school with a kiss and a reminder that I loved her. I went to work and focused on my tasks. I came home and helped with homework and made dinner and read bedtime stories. I was building a life, just the two of us, and it was smaller than I'd imagined, but it was ours and it was safe. The seasons changed. Fall became winter. Winter melted into spring. I kept waiting for the guilt to crush me, for the loneliness to become unbearable, but it didn't. My daughter thrived in therapy and slowly became her bright, energetic self again. The nightmares stopped. The flinching faded. She made friends at school and invited them over for playdates, and our small apartment filled with laughter and life. I made friends through the support group, people who understood complicated family dynamics, and the courage it takes to walk away. We met for coffee, texted each other during hard moments, celebrated small victories together. I learned that family doesn't have to mean blood relatives. It can mean the people who show up for you, who see you and value you and protect you when you need it. A year after that terrible Sunday afternoon, I found myself in a pharmacy across town, picking up a prescription for my daughter's seasonal allergies. I was tired from work, distracted, running through my mental to-do list, when I approached the counter and looked up to find my brother standing there. He was wearing a simple employee uniform, name tag pinned crookedly to his chest, and he looked like a completely different person from the arrogant doctor who'd held court at family gatherings. His shoulders were hunched forward, his face lined with exhaustion and defeat, dark circles under his eyes. He'd gained weight and lost the carefully groomed appearance he'd always maintained. His hair needed cutting. He looked older, worn down, fundamentally diminished. We stared at each other for a long, frozen moment. His mouth opened, closed. He swallowed hard, and I watched his Adam's apple bob. He tried again. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I was angry that day, and I shouldn't have. Your total is $12, I said, cutting him off. My voice was flat, emotionless, like I was reading from a script. His face crumpled. Please, I lost everything. My career, my reputation, my house. I need you to know I didn't mean to hurt her. I wasn't thinking. I was stressed and $12, I repeated, holding out my card without looking at him. He took it with shaking hands. The card reader beeped. He fumbled with the machine, had to swipe it twice because his hands were trembling so badly. She's okay though, right? Your daughter? I think about her every day. What I did, it haunts me. The receipt printed. I took it without making eye contact. Turned toward the door. Please? His voice broke behind me. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know. I stopped at the door. Didn't turn around. You're right, I said quietly. It doesn't change anything. I walked out. Behind me, I heard a sound that might have been a sob. I didn't look back. That evening, I found a message from my father I'd missed weeks earlier. We should talk. Families aren't supposed to be this way. I stared at it, looking for any acknowledgement of what had happened, any apology. There was nothing, just vague appeals to family obligation. I deleted it without responding. At home, my daughter was in her room with friends from school, laughing over some game. She saw me in the doorway and grinned. That unguarded smile I'd been terrified I'd never see again. The therapist had discharged her months ago. The nightmares had stopped. A few weeks later, my sister sent a desperate message through a cousin, asking for money one more time, swearing things were different. I blocked her number on every platform. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. Various relatives tried to mediate over the months, sending messages about forgiveness and healing. They didn't understand this wasn't about anger. This was about teaching my daughter she didn't have to accept abuse from anyone, even family. I stopped explaining myself. People who understood didn't need explanations. I found an old photo while cleaning one Saturday afternoon. It was stuck in the back of a drawer, behind some old bills and takeout menus. The photo was from a family gathering maybe 5 years earlier, before my daughter was born, before everything fell apart. We were all arranged in front of my parents' apartment building, my parents in the center, naturally, my brother on my father's right, standing tall and proud, my sister on my mother's left, leaning in with that practiced smile she used for photos, and me, off to the right edge, partially cut off by whoever had taken the picture, only half my face visible, one shoulder, part of my torso. Even in family photos, I was invisible. I studied the image, trying to remember that day. Had I known even then? Had I felt that familiar ache of being secondary, being less than, being the background character in my own family's story? My smile in the photo looked tired. My eyes weren't really smiling. I was there physically, but already checking out emotionally. How many years had I spent like that? Present, but not seen. Contributing, but not valued. Loving, but not loved. Back in the same measure? My daughter wandered into the kitchen where I was standing. What's that, Mama? Just an old picture. Who are those people? I looked at her. This beautiful girl who knew my parents as Grandma and Grandpa, only from a few early childhood memories that would fade with time. She didn't remember them as real people anymore. They were already becoming abstract concepts. Family she used to have. Nobody important, I said. I walked to the trash can and dropped the photo in. It landed face down on top of yesterday's coffee grounds and banana peels. Are you sad? My daughter asked, watching me. No, baby, I'm actually okay. And I was. That's what surprised me most. I'd thought this moment would hurt more, throwing away this last physical connection to the family I'd grown up in. But it felt like discarding something I'd already grieved. The people in that photo weren't my family anymore. Maybe they never really had been. My daughter hugged my leg. Can we make pancakes for dinner? Pancakes for dinner sounds perfect. She ran off to get her step stool from the bathroom, chattering about whether we should have chocolate chips or blueberries. I listened to her voice, so light and happy, and thought about how different our lives were now. Our apartment was smaller than my parents' house had been. We couldn't afford big family gatherings or expensive parties, but it was safe. It was calm. It was ours. No one here would hurt her. No one here would laugh at her pain. No one here would make her feel secondary or less than or invisible. That evening after dinner, we curled up on the couch together. She was getting too big to really fit in my lap anymore. All long legs and sharp elbows. But she still tried. We watched her favorite movie for the 100th time, her mouthing along with the dialogue, me just enjoying her presence. Mama? Yeah? Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. What makes you ask that, sweetie? You seem happy now. Happier than before. Before, when we used to go to Grandma's house, you always looked sad when we left. out of the mouths of babes. She'd noticed. All that time I'd thought I was hiding it, protecting her. She'd known I was unhappy. I am happy, I said, meaning it. I'm very happy. Are you happy? Yeah. I like it being just us. It's quieter. Is quiet good? Yeah. Before it was too loud. Like, loud in a bad way. People talking over each other and nobody listening. She'd been paying attention to more than I'd realized. Processing things I'd thought were going over her head. I like quiet too, I told her. Just us. Just us, she agreed, snuggling closer. Later that night, after she was asleep, I stood in her doorway like I did most nights, watching her breathe. She looked peaceful. No tension in her small face. No fear in her dreams. We'd come so far from that terrible Sunday afternoon. So far from the girl who'd cried in my arms asking why her uncle had hit her. So far from the woman I'd been, always seeking approval from people who'd never give it. I wasn't perfect. I'd made mistakes along the way. There were probably things I could have done differently, better ways I could have handled everything, but I'd done the best I could with what I had. I'd protected her. I'd gotten her help. I'd built us a new life, brick by brick, day by day. And that had to be enough. That was enough.